welcome to the Trends debate for the bill A1781, which authorizes psychiatric advanced practice nurses to complete certain certificates required for involuntary commitment to treatment. Let's go to the debate.
So, hi, I'm Marie, and our group was going to be debating Bill A1781. It gives psychiatric advanced practice nurses the ability to complete certificates required for involuntary commitment to treatment in New Jersey. So, Bree and I are going to discuss why passing this bill is a good idea and why it will help our American healthcare system as a whole, and especially due to physician shortages in rural areas and giving advanced practice nurses the ability to help out with that, and also the fact that they're completely competent to do so.
So, hello, my name is Gianna, and I'm on the opposing team with Alex, and we are here in opposition of Bill A1781, authorizing psychiatric advanced practice nurses to complete certificates requiring for involuntary commitment to treatment. However, APNs do not undergo the same education and training as MDs, and therefore are not qualified to authorize involuntary commitment. In addition, involuntary commitment is a last resort and therefore should be infrequently used. Saved only for the most extreme cases, for this reason, authorization of involuntary commitment should be reserved for physicians.
As Marie has stated, I'm Brianna, and we are both on the affirmative side in believing that advanced practicing nurses should have privileges when admitting psychiatric patients for involuntary commitment. There is going to be a considerable shortage of advanced practice nurses. It's estimated to be a 17% demand between 2016 and 2030. There are roughly 4.6 million Americans who suffer from mental illness, and there are only 13,000 psychiatric mental health APNs in practice. So there is a considerable gap for services needed, specifically when we are talking about rural areas where they do not have the access. These are where advanced practice nurses can really implement their practice and help serve the community better. In addition to that, it is estimated that there will be a considerable amount of psychiatrists retiring, which will then increase the demand even more. So advanced practice nurses are more than qualified to care for involuntarily commit psychiatric patients. They had typically have gone through a 4-year or an accelerated BSN, have practiced as a nurse, and then have gone through a master's program, in addition to more schooling to get the psychiatric certificate. So there is no reason why advanced practice nurses should not be able to involuntarily commit psychiatric patients, especially if there is such a great need. They are important in the healthcare team, and I think having that experience as a nurse on the healthcare team allows them to better help and predict the care for the patient in crisis.
All right. My name is Alex, and I'm here to argue that the volume of patients isn't big enough to warrant APNs being required, or it's necessary for them to be able to handle the involuntary commitments. Involuntary commitments of a psychiatric patient need to be reserved for the most extreme cases and circumstances. Involuntary commitment must be limited to patients who present with a serious risk of physical harm to oneself or others. It cannot be used in any other circumstances. If used appropriately, there should not be a high volume of patients requiring involuntary commitments. For reference, in 2015, 9 out of every 1,000 people with a serious mental illness were involuntarily committed. That's from SAMHSA. If you do the math, that's less than 1% of psych patients require an involuntary commitment. So despite the physician shortage, especially in rural areas, There's no reason why a medical doctor would not be able to handle the workload of authorizing a involuntary commitment, um, especially if the involuntary commitment rates are this low. Not only is the physician shortage argument invalid due to the low number of involuntary commitments, we must consider the effects of authorizing APNs for involuntary commitment powers. Would this cause involuntary commitment rates to be unnecessarily high? Will these powers be abused when more people have access to it? It's not necessarily better to have more people with this power. So I think it's important to remember that this is a last case scenario, and when we have all these people with this power to involuntarily commit people, it becomes open to abuse of this power, and it really should be a last resort. So I don't see why APNs really do need to have this power. There's more than enough physicians out there who can approve involuntary commitment.
Okay, so like I said before, my name is Marie. And in response to Alex, I just wanted to point out that nurses are unique in the healthcare team, especially to physicians, because nurses are especially skilled in developing interpersonal skills and relationships, and especially within the mental health population, the interpersonal relationship is crucial and critical to their health and well-being. So nurses have the knowledge of the medical conditioning, the patho, as well as behavioral issues and how they can interact with the customer and the consumer, rather, to develop the partnership model in healthcare. So about having the power to involuntary commit people, I would rather have people to have, and I don't like using the word power, I would say the authority or the compassionate role of helping people achieve their healthcare goals, and from healthcare providers who look at the patient from a holistic viewpoint. So furthermore, nurses have the clinical reasoning to continue taking the information, acquiring information, interpreting it, and synthesizing it to inform their clinical decision making. So all in all, the heart of what nursing does, and we've learned in school too, it's a lot of compassionate care. So having people who can provide that kind of care should be the ones that make the decisions about whether or not to put someone in involuntary commitment. Thank you.
So, going off on what Marie stated, no one is denying that nurses and APNs, specifically psychiatric APNs, are not holistic in their approach of patient care. And no one is denying that nurses use compassion when they're performing patient care. However, looking at education, psychiatric physicians go through 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of medical school, and then 4 years of psychiatric residency. Meanwhile, an APN goes through 4 years of undergrad nursing school and then a 16 to 24 month psychiatric APN program. Looking at the length of the education, clearly the psychiatric physician has more training and more experience to be adequately qualified to perform involuntary commitment. Nurses have less education requirements and less training. And do they have experience and qualifications? Yes. However, you have to look at the fact that this involuntary commitment issue cannot be taken lightly because you are taking away someone's rights. And therefore, with less training and less experience, there's a higher potential for mistakes, such as through statistics have shown that 7% of nursing errors and mistakes lead to fatalities. And nursing errors are usually due to lack of attentiveness and lack of intervention. Therefore, putting the power of involuntary commitment in the hands of psychiatric APNs is, if anything, irresponsible, rather than giving it to the hands of the MD who has more training, more experience, and more education because this situation cannot be taken lightly.
Thank you, thank you. Now let's hear the conclusion statement from the affirmative team.
In conclusion, we believe that advanced practicing nurses should be able to involuntarily commit psychiatric patients because there is such a gap and a need. And nurses are a vital part of the healthcare team. And as Marie had stated, they approach healthcare in a different way. They have a holistic approach and they are compassionate. So they may essentially foster a better relationship and rapport with a patient than a physician would, especially in such an important time of crisis. I would also like to point out and mention that 9.5% of deaths occur from medical errors, and that is not just on the nurse, that is as a healthcare team, which includes physicians as well. So there are definitely physicians who are making errors out there in the field that put these patients at risk.
Now to wrap it up, here's a concluding statement from the opposing team.
Gianna and I maintain that Bill A1781 should remain not passed, or it should not pass. The power for involuntary commitment should stay with the physicians. Advanced practice nurses are not being devalued here. We're not saying they're not competent. We're not saying that they're not capable, but we do believe that the power for involuntary commitment should stay with the physician. We've talked about different education levels. We've talked about staffing shortages and how the physicians should still be able to keep up with involuntary commitments. Bree brought up that 9% of medical errors occur due to physicians, and she does leave out the fact, though, that what if we commit someone who doesn't need it? Or what if we let someone go who does need it? You're putting other people at risk, just not that patient. So in the end, it really comes down to, does the person have the experience and the qualifications on paper and in real life to make that decision? And it's not one to be taken lightly. You're taking someone's rights away. You're forcing them to receive medical care that they may or may not want. So in the end, APNs, while they are great collaborators, they're very useful in practice, that this power still needs to stay with the physician.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for joining us today for this trends debate for Bill A1781. Have a great day.